Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Well, this is quite the motley crew of individuals that we have gathered here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Mohr. I'm the president of Conscious Capitalism, Arizona, and I am joined today by Keren Goldenberg, Thomas Eckschmidt, and Scott McIntosh. And I want to get into some of the backgrounds of all three of you. But the first thing that I want to do is I want to acknowledge something that I think is actually really, really interesting. So, Keren, you've spent the majority of your career in corporate communications with organizations like Hewlett-Packard. Thomas, you were earlier in your life a farmer and then spent a good chunk of your career in engineering. You have an MBA in finance. And Scott, you spent the majority of your career as an engineer, and particularly in deep underground mining. So how is it that a corporate communications professional, a farmer turned engineer with an MBA, and an underground miner, what the heck are the three of you doing in Phoenix, Arizona, talking about conscious capitalism? How does this happen?
It's an interesting journey because, from the farming to, engineering and then to MBA and then traveling 20 different countries and different projects all over the world to going back and starting businesses. That's when I discovered that I was an conscious capitalism. And I think the majority of the businesses that start, the leaders that start businesses, they are conscious capitalists. And what happened throughout their journey, they lose track on their purpose and they go after easy, fast cash to actually help. It's always good to have improved cash flow in your business, but that's a huge distraction from purpose. So sometimes it's better to stick to purpose. That's where I got into conscious capitalism.
So Thomas, if we can, let's hang on that just for a minute. This term conscious capitalist is a term that many of us in the conscious capitalism community often refer to. There are likely people listening to this program that have absolutely no idea what that really means. Can you share a little bit more about when we talk about conscious capitalists? What does that mean?
Never thought about defining that, but I think there's a feeling more than a definition behind it. Is when we start a business, when anyone out there decides to start a business, they start a business not to make something bigger, but to make something better. It starts with making their life better, their family life better, their community better, a product better, a service better. Nobody starts a business to do the same, more of the same. So ultimately you see something and you say, I can do this better. By doing this, I make my life better. I make my family's life better, my community better. So that idea to make something better using your own talent, that starts the conscious capitalism. Because why it's unconscious? Because you're not aware of the framework behind this. And as soon as you get aware of that four fundamentals, having a clear purpose, integrating your stakeholders, developing a strong culture, and making sure your leadership is always under development as servant to the purpose and to the community and to your people, that brings you to the conscious side of that conscious capitalism.
So really, in summary, what I took from that, if I may, is the language and the framework that conscious capitalism has so eloquently laid out is in many ways adopted by business people, but not knowing the language, not knowing the framework. And then when they're made aware of it, it's like, oh, I've been doing this all along, so I must be a conscious capitalist. So Scott, I think as I've gotten to know you, and you were in the midst of your mining career, you would absolutely be someone that at a time and place in your career was an conscious capitalist. Excuse me. How did you determine that you were going to run your business in a conscious capitalism framework before you even knew that this concept was out there? Why did this appeal to you? Why are you wired the way you're wired?
I'm not sure I can answer that specific question, why I'm wired the way I'm wired, but I literally don't know. It just is how I was wired. And for me, it just makes sense. It's just good business. And I didn't use the terminology higher purpose, stakeholder, conscious leadership, conscious culture that we use in conscious capitalism. We didn't call it a higher purpose, but we had advancing underground excellence was sort of the phrase that we used in our service to the mining industry. And that, in fact, on reflection back, that was our higher purpose. And so all the things we talk about in conscious capitalism, it made good sense. And I think the key thing for me that made the difference was I was always a long-term thinker, which we talk about that a lot in conscious capitalism, long-term versus short-term. And that was just the only thing that made sense to me was running a business long-term. And so out of that, I just naturally fell into what's the purpose of what we're doing and working with stakeholders and looking for win-win relationships versus win-lose. It was the only thing that made sense to me. And it wasn't until after I sold my business and kind of looking at what's next and trying to figure out how to tell my business story. I'm attracted to entrepreneurs or growing businesses, and I stumbled across conscious capitalism, and I learned the language and said, wow, somebody has articulated far better than I figured out just what it was that I was doing. And so I use this term unconscious conscious capitalist all the time because it describes me and what I was doing and so many others that we run across as we do this oh my gosh, somebody's described this is what I've been doing all my life, running and growing my business.
So, Keren, we have to invite you into the conversation now. And I was thinking about my geography is decent, but I believe that the distance between Phoenix, Arizona, where we're sitting today, and Israel is likely a bit further than Phoenix and Brazil, I think. Is that accurate?
Well, maybe the geographical distance is, but the purpose and the journey we are all going through is very, very short. It's almost tight, meaning I started my own conscious capitalism journey only 3 years ago. You've been there for, 13 years or more. And then once you get to know that there is a conscious capitalism movement and a model, when you're starting to search, what do I do with it now? And then I heard about Scott and the conscious business community here in Arizona and in Phoenix. And I told Thomas, we have to get to know Scott. And then we got to know Mac 6 and all the amazing thing that you're doing here. And it's very similar to what we're going through in Israel, meaning we have a growing conscious business community there, thanks to an amazing, inspiring business leader. Her name is Yael Almog Zakai. She actually founded the chapter in Israel. And I joined her after meeting Raj Sisodia. He came to Israel. He's one of the founders of Conscious Capitalism. And, well, it was very similar to what I did. I just realized that what I did, for example, at HP, engaging employees through purpose, it was very intuitive to me, but that's conscious capitalism. So somebody put it into words. And in Israel, as I said, well, when Yael brought the ideas to Israel, it was a crazy idea, okay? To bring this idea to a business community, very task-oriented, it's almost crazy. But actually, the caring society of Israel and the fundamentals and the values that we have actually enabled it. And it apparently is the best soil for conscious capitalism is in Israel. That's why we have so many business leaders talking that language. Even one of the former general of the IDF, he's running for one of the biggest...
like a political office?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly, political office.
Yep.
And last Friday, he had an interview in one of the biggest newspapers in Israel, and he said he's a conscious capitalist. Using that language, running, to be the prime minister of Israel, that's a really huge milestone for us.
Yeah, it's
really,
a big deal.
Really exciting, yeah.
So I need to understand. I know, so Thomas, you founded the chapter in Brazil. Yael founded the chapter in Israel. Keren, you've been working with Yael for, I think, 3 or 4 years. Yep. Yeah. How did you guys get connected? Like, where did that, were you on Match.com? Was it a dating site? How did this happen?
ConsciousDating.com.
Maybe there's a new business idea right there.
There was, I think 3 years ago, Keren sent me a message through LinkedIn, say, hey, can we connect? Can we discuss a couple of ideas on conscious capitalism? And then we exchanged, I think, 2 or 3 messages, yep. And then nothing else happened. In a Philadelphia conference, I met Yael, And we had a long conversation about, what I was doing. I shared with her the book I wrote before the field guide. It was a book in Brazil, Fundamentals of Conscious Capitalism, to support that training development I was doing. And from that conversation, actually reconnected the discussion of maybe coming to Israel and doing a program in Israel, ambassador program in Israel. That's where Keren went back and said, well, let's arrange this. Let's put that in operation. And she did, I can tell you, I think certainly from all the trainings I ran, that was a milestone in how we delivered the training for the group, as how we connected, how we interacted. It made a complete change on the structure and on the interaction with the group, with the content, and to create a community out of that. Not just people have gone through this, but taking it to the next level.
So I'm curious, in these conversations you had, the initial LinkedIn, meeting Yael in Philadelphia back a few years ago, which then culminated in bringing the Fundamentals program to Israel. What was it about what you were experiencing in Israel, Keren, that made you believe that the business community in Israel, and perhaps some of the surrounding business community, was ready for this? Like, what were you seeing? What were you feeling? What were you experiencing that you said with Yael, hey, we've got to bring Thomas to Israel?
Yes. Well, we didn't know it's going to work. Okay. We took a big risk.
Okay.
People were eager to find out what it is. So we didn't put any effort in, registration and marketing, just was full in a few days. And a lot of consultants and business leaders just came to the program, the first program, ever since we did more programs. And the reactions were amazing. The reactions of people are usually, we are like this. We didn't know there is a model behind it. And even if we did, and we read and, inspired by some of the lectures and the materials out there, we didn't know what to do with it. So what we're doing, Thomas and I, what we did, we took all this knowledge and we are trying to translate it to very actionable knowledge. And and the reaction, again, it was amazing. And right now we have a big community of conscious ambassadors. And we actually, what we wanted to do is to open conscious capitalism to the mass, not only to CEOs and to C-level, but everybody who's interested, okay? Even an 18-year-old boy, he is, in 5 years from now, 5 years from now, he could have a really, really big business. He's the next generation of leader. So we really wanted to open it to all and to give everyone the opportunity to get to know the model and what to do with it.
So let's hang on that for a minute, because as you talk about opening up the model to everybody, yes, spanning all different types of age groups, I would imagine, and if I've heard correctly, that some of the impact that conscious capitalism has had in Israel actually spans the Middle East conflict that's been going on for a long, long time. And you have a very up close and personal view of what's been happening in Israel with its neighbors. And it reminds me, and I forgive me, I don't know whose quote it belongs to, so I apologize, but countries who practice business with each other, practice commerce with each other, tend to not go to war with each other. And I'm curious if you've seen through the workshops that you and Thomas have delivered, if indeed Israelis and Arabs and Palestinians and the neighbors, Israel's neighbors, have you seen people with perhaps very different backgrounds come together through capitalism?
Well, we actually went to explore that at the very beginning. Okay, one of the first things that we did was to join local Israeli Arabs for the management. They're part of the management. So we have 8 people in the Conscious Capitalism Israel management. 2 of them are Arabic business leaders, very known and powerful. And we're holding events together. And we wanted to create or to make conscious capitalism as a bridge. Well, it will be very, too much to say as a bridge for peace. But yes, we can use and we must use conscious capitalism as a bridge between those 2 societies. And we have a long way to go. but it's a great idea. We have, both of us, Thomas and I, we have a vision to create a conscious resort, hosting Arab leaders and Israeli leaders and leaders from all over the world, talking about conscious capitalism and how to live your purpose and the other fundamentals, of course.
So the Conscious Capitalism book that was written by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia was, as I think we would all agree, a wonderful summary of the framework of the philosophy, and provided a tremendous amount of inspiration to anybody that picked it up. And most of us who have read that book from cover to cover put it down and say, this is great, and this is the way business should be. It's just good business. From that book, Thomas, you then taking what you've learned and experienced and creating the fundamentals of conscious capitalism in Brazil, and then partnering with Raj Sisodia and Timothy Henry to write the field guide for conscious capitalism. I'm curious, what was the catalyst for that? Was there a rumble within the community that we need more, we need to figure out how to do this? Like, why did that book come next?
I think the same way I was feeling the need for that. I think my audience, I start after I launched the Conscious Capitalism in Brazil. I did a lot of talks. I had a TED talk, and I was invited to do more and more talks. And people start coming back to me, say, I need more. How do I actually do this? And I recommended Raj and John Mackey's book. But ultimately, that was not enough. People start asking me. It made me work on a program without a book. And then from the program, we developed the book. And this, I think the same thing was happening here with Raj and Timothy. People just asking. Timothy had a couple of workshops, and people just wanted to more. That was a perfect storm, because when I asked Raj for the foreword to my book in Portuguese, he said, where's that coming from? It was a surprise, because I didn't share anything. I was just, doing it. After the foreword was written, he invited me to Boston. So I shared with him the structure of the book, how we did, how it was working. And he said, well, want to join us to write it here in the US? And that was the next step. So I think the people are already inspired. They need to go to the next level. And that's one of the things I learned in Israel very, very clearly, tachlis. We need to go back to what I'm going to do tomorrow morning when I'm back to my desk. And that was the first word I learned from my visit to Israel.
I wish there was a camera in here, because to see Thomas in his lovely Brazilian accent say tachlis, and to see Keren's reaction was just priceless. And Scott's over here laughing as well. So, Scott, you have the distinct honor of having founded the Arizona chapter of Conscious Capitalism, which was the third chapter in the world, only to be preceded by Australia and Chicago. So quite an accomplishment in and of itself. And I believe that dates back to 2013. What made you decide? Because you had long since sold your business and obviously could invest your time and energy in a variety of different things. Why was this the thing, at least in 2012, 2013, when you decided to do this? Why was this the thing?
So I sold my business in 2008, spent a few years, what am I going to do? Explored retirement. That doesn't work. I love work. My son Kyle and I founded Mac 6. It was kind of 2011. It was about that same time that we discovered conscious capitalism. And I think the interesting thing, because of my age, as I had a career, I was not seeking purpose in my life. I'm going to climb a ladder. I'm going to make money, and I'll do this give back thing later on. Unlike millennials, and that's too generic right now, but younger generations looking for a purpose, and that's all great. I sought that later, and so I got to the point in my life, having sold a business, and I don't have to work financially. Is okay. What am I going to do to give back? So I explored nonprofits and doing different things, and I say this with love because I still do a lot of nonprofit work, but I hate the model, and of passionate executive directors begging for other people's money to do their work. And so people who know me, I can get away with saying that because I do a lot of nonprofit work. But I with the discovery for me and really thinking about business and capitalism, if you really want to make a difference in the world, the way to make a true difference is through business. And nothing wrong with government, nothing wrong with nonprofits, but business, by the way it works, we can make a difference. And I'm at a point in my life that I'm trying to figure out how to make a difference. And so while I still do nonprofit work, I am just far more attracted to models and teaching around business as a pure force for good. And so as Kyle and I started Mac 6, and conscious capitalism is embedded in everything that we do, and we latched on to conscious capitalism movement as a platform to help us through Mac 6 and different ways to just spread that message to more and more people. And that's to shift it back to Thomas and Keren, and Brian, you and I have the conversations. It's a curiosity that this conscious capitalism movement Conscious Capitalism in Arizona is a nonprofit, and yet we have capitalism in our name, and we don't do any philanthropic fundraising. We're working on earned revenue sorts of models, but as where Thomas, it kind of led to you and I've known each other for several years, but kind of the big conversation you and I and Brian had several months ago, as you and Keren getting together to start this conscious business journey as a for-profit business. Wow, okay. So as Brian, you and I were doing conscious capitalism and nonprofit, and here's somebody creating a for-profit business out of that. And so I think that, shifting it back, what led you to create a for-profit business around this, and how do you guys see that this may expand the work that we've all been doing together within the framework of conscious capitalism?
Before you answer, Thomas, I just want to say that in the elevator, we had a conversation saying that when we grow up, we want to be Scott McIntosh, and we want to have this working space, because you're actually like living conscious capitalism for so many years, leading this idea. And here we're just talking about it, enabling other conscious capitalists to develop, but still we have a long way to go to make it even more sustainable.
Yeah. And, going back to what you said, Scott, I think the biggest impact we can do in the world is through a business, not through an NGO. And I was in Israel, and I met this guy. He sold his business, and he wanted to open a foundation and do some good, got all this money from the sale of his previous company. And he had a consultant, a mentor, a coach. He said, if you want to do good, just get a distressed company and make it strive again. Make the people working there happy. And Keren can tell better that story, but that's an example of how we can generate more value. And the challenge as we build businesses is actually to continuously generate value, to continuously improve lives, improve communities, and improve the world. As long as we keep increasing the value generated, we will be there, improving. And for an NGO, it's harder because, if you get a lot of people convinced that they should give you the money, you have the money. And, what else are you going to do with that? And so for me, the biggest thing to change the world is through business, using business as a force of good. And the more we think about this and how we transform NGOs, because looking at the framework for conscious capitalism, that's an NGO framework. Every NGO has a purpose. Every NGO has a strong leader that actually came up with the idea to do something good. Every NGO has a culture to actually change that environment. Every NGO was trying to recognize the interdependency and build a strong stakeholder relationship. So that's an NGO. The only thing missing is the value generation. So we need to focus those four fundamentals and generating value and creating for-profit businesses.
Right.
So is there an element of the conscious capitalism framework that is now ready for expansion? The four founding principles of higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, conscious leadership, conscious culture. Am I hearing that perhaps there's now we're ready to add a fifth, a sixth? Are we ready?
I think we talk about the value creation every time we talk about each one of the tenets or the fundamentals of conscious capitalism. And the traditional capitalism looks at value, only financial value. And we have to expand. Financial value is one potential value that a business can generate. We have social value, environmental value, cultural value, spiritual value, knowledge, so much more that can be created through a business. And we need to rethink always to bring that model back to the table, because what we learn in schools, the purpose of a business is to generate financial results. And that is actually wrong. The purpose of a business is to generate value in all those dimensions. But if you don't generate profit, you are socially irresponsible, because you put in risk all your ecosystem, your suppliers, your customers, your employees, your community, everything that's supporting you to stand there and generate value. So it's almost like a dilemma. My purpose is not to generate profit, but if I don't generate profit, I'm socially irresponsible.
Why do you think we have such a hard time? And perhaps this is an overgeneralization, but I think all of us have been involved in conscious capitalism long enough to hopefully agree that profit somehow has become, I'm not going to say a dirty word, but not talked about nearly enough within the community. And maybe that's just my opinion, but I think there's an opportunity there that, and frankly, if we're going to continue to grow conscious capitalism, then I believe it's incumbent upon all of us to demonstrate that when running a business in alignment with these principles, that over the long term, the profit will continue to grow sustainably, and you will be able to create more shared value, which, Thomas, to your point, extends beyond just the financial value. But that financial value piece, it doesn't seem to get the attention it deserves. Agree, disagree? I'm curious. Scott, you look like you're ready to rock.
I've got to leap in here. This has been, so I've been 5-6 years now doing the conscious capitalism, and I'm all in. The language we use in conscious capitalism is profit is a byproduct from pursuit of higher purpose. And I get that totally, but there's sort of a deeper level of thinking that's required to understand that. And I've got investor friends who use the language, Scott, shit is a byproduct, and I don't like talking about profit as a byproduct. And so I think there's a lack of comfort in people talking about the profit side of things, and even in conscious capitalism, there's social impact investment. There's all these things that for many is I'm going to make a profit, but it's okay that I make less profit because I'm doing good things. That, for me at least, is not what conscious capitalism is about. That we need to maximize profit, because with more profit, what do we do with profit? We reinvest it in the business. There's too much of a perception out there that I'm the owner of the business, I'm making maximized profit, I'm going to put it all in my pocket. That is just really dumb of me if I do that, because if I've got a thriving business, I reinvest that profit in my business, both in pursuit of my higher purpose and in fact, expanding on that purpose. And so there's some language that, Thomas, over the next 2 days as we're this conference and call it value generation and just this word profit and how we talk about it, the Larry Fink Blackwater newsletter that talks about purpose and profit being inextricably linked. I love that language because it brings in neither one is a byproduct of the other. They're inextricably linked, and more profit just links to more higher purpose. It's just there's in all of our communities there's just this lack of I don't know why. It's not a dirty word necessarily, but there's a lack of comfort in talking about it that I think we can help the movement to show what real profit can do to advance the higher purpose.
Well, I think it's really interesting too. And Keren, I want to get your perspective on this. The Gallup organization has been measuring employee engagement both globally as well as country by country for 22 some odd years. I believe they started their famous Q12 survey back in 1996. And at least here in the United States, the percentage of employees that fall into that engaged category, the best category, has hovered roughly around 30 to 34%, pretty consistently since the year 2000. So an 18-year run of relatively flatness. So we've got a third of the employees that are engaged. They're the ones driving creativity and innovation. We've got, 10 to 15% that are just actively disengaged. They're the miserable people. And then you've got about 50% of people that are just, somewhere between doing just enough to get by and maybe sleepwalking through the day. But that group has this reservoir of discretionary effort that they could bring to the business. And Gallup estimates that by not tapping into that reservoir of effort, we are leaving $500 billion in productivity on the table. And so as we begin to talk about profit, and we talk about business and we talk about purpose, it would lead me to believe that what's missing isn't all of the efficiencies and effectiveness and the lean and the Six Sigma and this program and that program. What we seem to continually ignore, and possibly because it's so hard to measure, is what's inside somebody's heart and soul. And as we are meaning-making creatures, if the leaders of the organization aren't creating an environment in which we can believe there's something bigger than just our own gain, and we are pursuing something beyond just making money, that to me seems like a potential obvious answer. And given your background with so many well-known corporations, and you said that some of this just is so, it's a no-brainer for you. Do you think that is part of the answer?
No, I think that's the whole answer. No, really, because more and more people, as humanity develops, although we have some signs of going backwards, I think humanity goes somewhere. Okay, we see some lights in very, very important places. Me seeing a headline in Israeli business newspaper, the biggest one, "Love in Business," I was shocked. So we are moving somewhere, okay? And more people are asking themselves every morning, why did I get up this morning? Why did I come to work? And I remember back at the recession, 2008, I was working at HP. People got fired. We had no choice. And so what do you do with employee engagement in these tough times, above all times? And it was challenging, but for me, it was very natural to call the founders and ask them, why did you, not the founder of HP, but the specific division, why did you create this company? Why did you get up in the morning? What excited you? And I gathered them and I gathered the employees and I wanted them to remind us, why did we get up this morning? And purpose led us here also to Arizona. Purpose is what drives people to get up in the morning, the next generation above all. So basically, that would be my answer.
Anything to add, Thomas, Scott? You guys on this particular topic around that is part of, or as Keren would say, the whole answer to what could come next?
It is, and I think what you mentioned, Lean, Six Sigma, all these improvement techniques we have used so many years,
yep,
just for processes, for the mechanical part outside the human side.
Yep.
We need to create those same techniques to look to the inside. What is the Lean Six Sigma heart? What is the inside look? And that goes through purpose.
Yeah.
That brings purpose, has the ability to actually bring that out, bring that talent out, because ultimately everyone has a talent. And if they're not performing, it's our responsibility as a leader to find the right place to that person. If we don't do that, we are just telling the message to the company, say, it's okay to behave that way. We accept that. And that's not acceptable for a business, for the other people that are engaged, involved, for the community, for the investor, for anyone. So this brings back to the role of the leader. How important is the leader to serve that purpose? And I think one of the most important things, what actually navigates through all those four fundamentals, is communication. Because how do you get the purpose out of the founder and put it out there so people understand what is the journey? How do you get connected to your stakeholders and to listen to them? That's communication. How you enforce a culture of, respect, of trust, that's communication. How you get that engaged. How you make the leaders, behaviors evident to their followers, to their organization. That's all communication. So communication is the energy. It's what flows in between those four tenets, is the most fundamental element that sometimes we forget, but that's permeating all of the four fundamentals.
Scott, Keren, did you have something else?
Yeah,
please.
It was amazing to see that purpose does not only elevate or increase engagement, but sometimes if organization, I think that's the higher way of implementing conscious capitalism model, is to examine or explore the pain points of the business and see how the purpose can support it. For example, you want to increase sales. Well, did you make sure that the the sales, they know the purpose? Do they know why does this company exist? Or do they know just to describe the product and how to overcome resistance of selling? As long as you make sure that the purpose is well known within all employees and implemented in so many ways, not just to know, and not to just hang it over the walls, really live the purpose, then it is very well connected with the profit.
So I want to go back to Keren, because you talked about the recession and unfortunately having to, people lose their jobs, right? Times are tough, and unfortunately business goes through cycles. Scott, throughout the McIntosh engineering journey, I'm sure there were times of great success and things were fantastic, and there were likely times when the shit hit the fan and, the only option was to have to lighten the load. And unfortunately, people sometimes, that means they have to go find a job elsewhere.
With lots of layoffs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and those are probably the clearly the toughest thing a business leader has to do is to eliminate jobs. And that obviously negatively impacts people and their families. What's been your experience in the conscious way of doing that? How do you do that with a sense of humanity, with a sense of love, with a sense of care? Because I know we've talked about it. You've done it. You've had to do it. Doesn't make it easier, but there is a way, and this might begin to get at some of the actionable things that I think our community, by and large, is looking for. How do you make some of the more difficult decisions a business leader needs to make in the most human way?
This is great conversation because business is really easy when the revenues are coming in, and it's kind of what do you do when it gets really, really tough from a conscious perspective. Just tying back to the sort of earlier question, and Brian, the Gallup data around people and engagement, and Keren, your answers on it. It's all about people. Whether it's the answer, it's a huge part of the answer, and the back to the specific question is conscious businesses. I mean, it's a people-centric operating system is the language we use. As Keren and Thomas, as I heard you talk in Conscious Capitalism, and Brian, we talk about love and we talk about heart. Some people hear that and it sounds soft. And it's not soft. And it's because there's tough love that has to happen sometimes. And sort of all that tied in as I ran my business, and I don't know how that I knew how to do this other than thinking long-term about it, is we didn't use the term love in our business. That was too touchy-feely. We used the word care. We cared about our employees, and even as we cared about them, I still need you to show up at 8 o'clock or whatever the time is. You still need to show up, and we still need productivity. And so there's how we achieve all these things. And so I think the answer, as we dealt with the tough issues, it's communication. It's open, honest, transparent communication with people. As I grew our business, and we had 10 years of survival followed by 5 years of rock and roll. Well, those survivals times, and we were serving mining companies around the world, and some in Brazil, where Thomas is from, none in Israel, but as commodity prices went up and down, and we had ups and downs, and we had to lay people off, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The way we did it consciously was with open, honest, transparent communication with people, because that's what they wanted to know. And so we couldn't always predict the future exactly, but we talked with them. And then when we knew things like layoffs were going to be coming up, is we gave people as much advance warning. And there were a number of cases where other businesses are thriving, and I'm laying somebody off. And by the way, I've got a job interview for you set up someplace. And to how do we, you couldn't do that in all cases, but it's you treat people as human beings that you care about. And the love is a good word as well. And you talk with them. And my job as CEO was, hey, if I run out of cash and the bank starts telling me what to do, there is no business for anybody. And so we had to make the tough decisions. And the key, Keren, you're a communication specialist, and just that communications is the answer when tough things are being done.
You know, and I want to get to the conscious business journey, which is part of why we're all gathered here today. But before I do, I just want one more topic on this notion of love inside of business, and call it care, call it love. I'm going to call it love. But as humans, I think it was Freud who said love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. Love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. So let's all agree with Freud just for a minute and not debate it. If that is indeed true and we agree with it, why the hell are we so afraid to invite love into the workplace? Like, what's the problem?
Well, the solution, I will talk about the solution, because the solution is actually in conscious leadership, because conscious leadership is actually a Shakti leadership. Shakti is the feminine side of a leader, and Shiva is the male side of the leader. And the conscious leadership talks about the fact that you don't have to be either. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You have to be both, okay? And when you lead from the middle, from a very balanced and strong and confident point, when you are whole with yourself, it's also a whole, lead as a whole person. Well, that's conscious leadership. And you will find yourself handling tough issues with a lot more confidence and better results.
The short answer is it's hard to do. I mean, it's really hard. It's really easy for me to be a command and control leader, and I've got control in me. It's hard to do. It's far easier for me to, you're fired. Okay, I'm a busy guy, and so I've got to terminate somebody. You're fired. Off you go. It is hard to do, to have those conversations, and yet if I take the time to have those conversations, and it's just, I care about you as a human being, and I don't have employment for you right now, but it takes a deeper level of thinking, which is what we do around conscious leadership in this conscious capitalism movement. People haven't been trained to see the benefits of that, because it's longer term benefits versus the short term benefits. You're fired, you're off the payroll, I've saved cash, versus the long term benefits of treating people like human beings. It's hard.
It is really hard, because when you look at the short, and this is when you lose track of conscious capitalism on the short-term decisions, and just firing somebody to actually solve a cash problem tomorrow is something very easy, very quick, but you might lose talent, you might lose credibility, you might lose trust, engagement. That has a tremendous impact on all the organization. Now, making a quick decision, command and control kind of approach, is very easy, very quickly, but making a long-term decision is more complicated, because you need to engage everybody to come to a collective decision, and not, you need cooperation as opposed to just deciding yourself. It's getting out of getting into a learner mindset. You are always learning, and you are not learning alone. You're learning with your team, with your community, with your customers, with your suppliers. You're always learning. So that mindset has a tremendous difference on the leadership role and how you actually lead the people, and how people will lead you, follow you, because, you're the example of your organization, of your community.
I'm curious, Thomas, are you seeing, given just the amount of travel that you do, the number of countries you visit, the number of talks and presentations and seminars and teaching that you do around the fundamentals of conscious capitalism, are you seeing any differences in the receptiveness from different countries? Are there societies? Are there groups of people, perhaps in Israel or in Brazil or in the United States or in Spain or in all, where you go, do you see differences in who's more ready to go all in on this versus who may be a bit more apprehensive?
I think everywhere there are people ready. They just need to have access to the content, access to the framework, to make that a stronger approach, a conscious approach. We always say, in a world that's more abundant, it's easier to adhere to those principles as opposed to a world with, lacking infrastructure, lacking health, lacking safety, insurance, all those things. But everywhere, even with that gap, you find people interested in saying, how do I not only engage my team, my company, my organization, but the communities I'm working in? So there are two interesting initiatives on my side. One in Colombia, there's an organization that actually has 180,000 companies associated to them. And the CEO of this organization was at the CEO Summit last year. He calls me and say, how do I make sure that this framework gets to 180,000 companies?
Wow.
That's my goal.
Wow.
I want to influence 180,000. So another company, like a credit union in the south of Brazil, operating in 27 cities, he said, I want to influence business leader in the cities I'm operating. I want them to be aware, because they starting to understand that their success depends on alignment of their stakeholders towards their success. Another organization also in Colombia said, how do I move this forward? Well, let's use ISO 9001 approach. You can't convince your customers, but you can invite your suppliers to listen to that approach. And the ones that will come, they will understand they are ready. You build stronger, better relationships. And from that, you will build better results, innovation, contribution, and all kinds of other values that are usually out of the transactional relationship between a customer and a supplier.
So we are all here over the next 2.5, 3 days to do something that, at least as far as we know, has not been done in the United States yet. And that is to deliver the Conscious Business Journey workshop and certification program to a group of 35, 40 folks from around the globe. Many of them from the Arizona market, but quite a few people from outside of Arizona. What would make, when we finish up on Wednesday, what in your minds would be the champagne moment where we would be toasting a glass of champagne with each other? What, as you think about, I'd love to hear from each of the three of you, as you think about and fast forward to Wednesday at 5 o'clock or 5:30, whenever we finish, what will make you want to raise a glass of champagne and have a toast?
Well, I think that as long as we have more questions than answers at the end, I would consider that a success. That means that we had really, really good discussions, and we don't want the conversation of the journey to be happy, joy. We want it to be real life, okay? How do we implement conscious capitalism in real life? So we're going to open it like a surgery. And I'm not sure we're going to finish it in 2 days. This is only a starting point, and we have a really good starting point with all the amazing people that you gathered. So this is only the beginning, and we are planning to continue do webinars and to meet again and to, have one-on-one support with people who are consultants who have challenges in their businesses, because it's something new. It's still new. This whole idea is still new in the world. We need to support it. Personal support. That would be success to me. That we have good relationship with amazing people who are striving to the same purpose. We share the same purpose and passion. So we are starting something that requires a champagne, I think.
To have closing this is getting people back and say, I know where to use this. I know how to use this, how we continue the journey. So clarity that people have when they finish this, say, I know how to use it now. I know who can benefit from this. But what is our journey from now on? It's not just on your own. What we're trying to build is a community. It's a collective effort, not only in the US, globally, where we can learn from each other. It's a learning journey. We're never going to stop learning. We're never going to stop sharing, because a practice is what Elon Musk just did. He opened up his patents to what? To improve, to reduce the climate change issue. This is what we have. Conscious capitalism, there's no patent. How we share more of this so people can actually improve more businesses with the same practices. Oh, I adjust your practice here. I have an adjustment here. And I just keep adding those practices, making leadership more conscious, making purpose more evident, communicating with stakeholders to integrate that in our business, and striving cultures to change the world around us.
Brian, that's a great question. And I'm going to really think about it this afternoon and over the next 2 days. And Keren, I love your answer, and I'm going to actually play off the answer, because the next 2 days are going to come and go. Done. So much of our work the last 5 years in conscious capitalism is putting on events, and somebody listens to an inspiring speaker, I'm inspired, and what do I do next? And I think the evolution in this entire conscious capitalism movement and conscious business journey being a part of that is, and it's actionable tools. Yes, and people are going to come and they're going to get some actionable tools. And what do we do on Monday morning? But Thomas and Keren, what you guys are doing is building community. And so the champagne moment for me will be a true sense that as we've got people coming here to Arizona from 14 different geographic across the country and international locations, that as you have already formed community in Israel, formed community in Brazil and Colombia and other locations, and now we're adding the U.S. into it, is a real sense that the people that have participated are now part of a learning and growing community that will continue to add to all of this. It's funny, as we say, it's just good business. You peel back the layers of the onion on what it takes to do really good business. It's hard. And so from conscious business perspective, if we have that sense on Wednesday that these folks that have come together are now part of this growing community with us, will have been a huge success in helping take conscious capitalism to a very much next level.
Yeah, this is exciting. We have quite a few days ahead of us, and I am so looking forward to being a participant and going through the learning and likely having more questions than answers. Hopefully having a few questions answered also along the way, and continuing to help proliferate this thing that we all believe in so wholeheartedly, that is very much likely the answer to many of the world's ails, which is leveraging business as a very, very powerful force for good, which it can be as long as it's in the hands of the right leaders. At the end of the day, that's a lot of what it comes down to. With our couple minutes left here, any parting remarks that, or any topics that you guys wanted to make sure we discussed that we just didn't have an opportunity to chat about up to this point? I guess maybe it would be a missed opportunity if we at least didn't say that there's a pretty big conference coming here to Arizona in about, a month and a half, 2 months. The annual Global Conscious Capitalism Conference, April 23rd, 24th, and 25th at the Sheraton Grand at Wild Horse Pass. The keynote speaker lineup, and the overall breakout speaker lineup is just fantastic. The property is gorgeous. It has just this wonderful flair of what Arizona is all about. And I know at least Scott and I, being residents here, are very, very excited to welcome hundreds, if not thousands, of people from across the globe to experience Arizona. So we're excited about that. Any other parting thoughts?
Well, I have 2 comments. One, first of all, I love Arizona. Seriously, it has a lot of similarities to Israel. Not only the climate, but the people, the authenticity. I admire it really. And everybody is, entrepreneurs and amazing people that I met here before and now. And the second thing is that you mentioned purpose and profit. And you were talking about cultural differences and how people accept it. And I must say that in Israel, although we felt that like people are ready to talk about purpose, we had to start from the profit, meaning we do have like an annual purpose in business conference, which we are holding in the stock exchange building in Tel Aviv. And we are connecting those 2 things together from the beginning. So we kept the conversation around it. We are not afraid to talk about profit, not at all. On the contrary, we do believe this is the force of business. This is the context. Let's not forget the context. Okay. So just the community, the business community in Israel, we are all around this purpose and profit together. But it's a cultural issue.
Well, I think going back to the conference in a month and a half here in Arizona, it's going to be a great opportunity to bring the community together, to exchange experience. And I've been involved in conscious capitalism since 2010, the first CEO summit at Arrowhead in California. Since then, I've been in every single event, and I just come back so inspired, so energized. And I think this conference, we have the opportunity not just only to get energized and inspired, but strengthen our ties as a community, as actually seeing what we're doing everywhere in the world and sharing this, becoming part of something that is connected. We got to go to the practical action, how we help companies to do this. Profit, not generating profit is socially irresponsible. And so that's part of the equation. Purpose and profit have to go side by side.
Yep.
Just like to close with an appreciation for Thomas and Keren and what you guys are doing here. And we touched on it earlier, and it may be lofty, but peace through commerce. And I'm just so personally intrigued that Brazil and Israel have come together, and other South American countries, and we have this opportunity to be a part of it here in the U.S. now through what we're doing over the next couple of days. And it may be so, I mean, it's so far beyond to think about the possibilities. But as I've heard the stories of Jewish and Arabs together in the same place, and business is a force for good, and Philomena Breeze, who has her separate organization, part of Conscious Capitalism, Peace Through Commerce, it's a global organization. There are just real possibilities here, and let's just aspire to those possibilities as we're doing this work together. I just love it. Thank you both for letting us be a part of this with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Yeah, conscious capitalism can save the world, I think, is what you're saying, Scott. And I think you've got a room full of people who would agree with you 100%.
We've only so far lifted billions of people out of poverty, and so yes, let's solve more than that. We can aspire to more, is what we say.
Amen. Amen. Well, what a wonderful conversation. I cannot thank the three of you enough. Scott McIntosh, Thomas Eckschmidt, Keren Goldenberg. Just a fantastic conversation. So excited for the next few days. And with that, we will end our conversation. Thank you so much, guys.